Well, hey everybody, and welcome to this midweek review with Mr. John. I am Mr. John. We've come to know that. And we are kind of moving on from where we were. We kind of started a little bit ago with creation. We moved up to the whole Jacob and Esau story. Well, we're going to move a little bit deeper into the Bible. Now, if you take your Bible and you were to open it up and just kind of lay it open where half falls this way and half falls this way, you will probably end up in the book we are talking about. It is the book of Psalms. And the book of Psalms I love because I actually started to do something kind of like I think is going on in Psalms. When I hurt my back when I was a lot younger, not a young man, but I was kind of there, and I hurt my back really bad, and I had to have some surgeries that were going to take a long time to heal. And the doctor said, listen, here's what I suggest you should do. Journal. Write down how you feel in this moment. Write down your thoughts, your questions, just your joys, your highs, your lows. Write down all those things. And just kind of at some point you can kind of see when you start to get better, you can kind of look back and see where you were before. And that is what the Psalms are. Now the Psalms are written kind of like poetry, and it's also written for music. Did you know that the Psalms that you can actually sing, because the way they were written were kind of like songs, and in some of the Psalms they actually tell you what instrument should be played at this time for this stanza of what is written, and it's so amazing. And the writers of Psalms, basically the big one of Psalms writer was King David himself. King David, we know, loved to play music. He loved to play the harp. He actually is playing a harp when somebody King Saul throws a spear at him because of all the whole Jonathan story. And we know that. We've talked about that a long time ago, but we know that David was a guy who kind of saw things through music and worshiping and things like that. So when he wrote down, I could imagine that a lot of his things came down like in a very poetic type of writing. And David wrote a lot of stuff. And he wrote down his highs, like he wrote down how great God was and the things that God was doing in his life, and how he was succeeding in God, and how God was gracious to him and the things he was getting. And he also talked about something that was really hard for me to write down at first. But then when I started doing it, I noticed that it became easier. Have you ever tried to write down your struggles, the things that aren't going so well? We kind of tend to kind of avoid talking about that, even if it's writing it down and it's only going to be seen by us, because journaling is kind of like this. I'm curious, when David and the other writers of the Psalms, when they wrote these, did they write them for the people, or did they write them to themselves as kind of their own thoughts, and it just kind of got out there? But the writing is so good and so great and so gracious and so loving, and in some instances there's so much hurt and pain and questioning, what do I do in these situations? And that's what journaling does. You write down what you're feeling and how you feel. And it's kind of a way to let things out when we do. And I also journal, like when I read the Bible. I kind of will say, oh man, that's something that really stood out to me. And so like last week we talked about Jacob and Esau and the mighty hug. And man, I wrote so much down about this mighty hug that happened. And it's amazing to me that the God of creation, I feel he created the hug too. And I said that because that feeling you get of just overwhelming relief and joy when somebody forgives you. And in the Psalms, we see David talk about this when he writes about his struggles in the beginning of Psalms. And as he moves on, we see some of the things that he feared or worried about or struggled about get answered, and his just overwhelming joy and relief of coming back from these things and how he just presented it was so good. So guys, I would suggest to you that maybe journaling might be a way to get some things off your chest too. Write it down. Even if nobody sees it, it's okay. It just is kind of a way to get it out there, to just kind of put it beyond yourself. Like if you're super mad at your brother, instead of going and doing something that would be sinful, just sit there. Today, my brother broke my favorite toy and it made me super angry. And I don't think I could ever forgive him for it. And you write that down. And then a few days later, month later, you kind of going back and everything has been worked out and everything's cool. And you see this note that he broke the toy and I could probably never forgive him. And here you've already forgave him. The mind is changed. And you can kind of go, I remember that time when I said I could never forgive my brother. But man, I just feel so good that I was able to forgive him. You know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to go give him one of God's glorious hugs. So guys, I'm reaching out to you with a glorious hug. I'm going to give to you. I know school's coming. Buckle down. Have you got it marked on your calendar, or is there a big X going, no? Hey, write how you feel down about school. Because listen, if I would have wrote down how I felt about school when I was younger, it probably wouldn't have been the best. But if I look back on it now, man, school was awesome. I learned so much. I gained so much. And the friends I made is amazing. Wish I'd have wrote that down. Hey, I think I'm going to write it down when I get done with this. I'm going to journal it. I'm going to make my own psalms in my... Now, they're not going to be poetic. I'm not a poetic kind of guy, and I'm not a song lyric kind of guy, but I do like to journal. Hey, verse is coming up. Hope you're learning this one. This is a new month. New one coming out. Bye. Our verse for this month is, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. Psalms 139:14.